All right, let's just start this thing then. Let's do this. What's up, guys? Want to welcome you all out here. I don't know how many we have now because we originally had like 500 people, and now just the really stalwart, strong ones of you are sticking to it. So thank you for being here. So while we're going, you guys can chat your questions anytime you want. Just chat your questions, and Chris is going to be monitoring the questions, and he's going to be asking questions as we kind of have like little moments of downtime in between stuff. So let's get started. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is off-camera flash basics, and a lot of this has to do with what we're going to be doing lighting basics. It's going to be kind of excerpts from some of our recent shoots. We're going to be talking about photography 101 stuff, lighting 101, lighting 201. We'll get into some kind of actual images and kind of work through some images just so you guys can see how we do this. And then, well, we'll take your questions as we go. And I also have some cool gear recommendations too. So we have a couple different things coming up too, guys. We have some really cool announcements that are coming on Monday, along with our Creative Live class on Monday. So if you guys don't know about that, be sure to register for the Creative Live class, Incredible Engagement Photography. And Chris, I think he has the links, so he'll post links as we're going. There's like, yeah, I think Chris can post links into the chat and stuff. So let's do this. So what I want to do is actually first talk about location scouting. I'm going to go full screen on these windows. Actually, let me just make sure I shared. Did I share that window before I switched to it? I don't know. I did not. Let me do that now. Okay. Share screen. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about location scouting first, just because I feel like personally location scouting is such a huge part of just lighting in general. Location scouting helps us to understand the lighting within the scene and how we want to add light to it. It also helps us from a planning standpoint. We location scout everything. Even if we've already been to a location 100 times, we still go early just to scout it because things change. You'd never know if something's blocked off, if there's construction, another event going on, or some reason why you can't shoot there. So it's always good to take that 5, 10, 20 minutes of time just to go and scout a location prior to actually shooting it. Usually we'll go there a little bit early on the day of the wedding. So usually on weddings, I'll try and arrive about an hour to an hour and a half early. For engagement sessions, I'll just go there a few minutes early before the couple gets there and just kind of take a look. And it gets me into the mood too. You guys got to get into the mood to shoot. I feel like I have to get into the mood. So it helps me with that. And it helps you, another thing, to be creative. My big thing with location scouting is that it's very, very difficult to kind of be creative and to know, how do I say this? To know what to do differently when you are rushed. So when you get to a location, if you only have 30 minutes and you haven't location scouted it, you kind of just stick to the things that you know are going to work, and you don't really work creatively on the shooting standpoint. You don't do things differently. You just do what you did before. So that's kind of one of those things there. So I wanted to walk through some examples of location scouting. And what we're going to do is, let me just jump out of the PowerPoint thing for 1 second. And we're going to go to Lightroom. I'm going to switch my catalog real quick. And Chris, if anyone has any questions on location scouting, let me know. I'm going to pull up a shoot yesterday. And this was a 6-hour, it was a full day portrait session, basically. So we had plenty of time. And so what I'll do is actually on long shoots like this, where we're going from location to location, I'll just kind of scout as we're walking, as we're going. So I want to show you guys what we see in a scene. And I usually, when I'm walking through a scene, I'll kind of take a couple shots, test out some different lenses before I actually start shooting it. So this is one of those. 1 sec. All right. So let's go to, and I'm just going to flip back to the window just to make sure nobody has any questions or anything. If you see questions, go back to Webinar Jam. Okay, perfect. Landscapes. All right, here we go. So I'm going to bust out my little pen tool here. I have a brush preset that I've set up inside of Lightroom. for tutorial purposes. So if you wonder why I'm drawing with a red pen, now you know. All right. So what I like to do is when we go into scenes, I like to kind of point out and identify, oh, my pen tablet is not, man, we have all sorts of technical issues right now. Let me plug in my Wacom tablet so I can draw actually. By the way, how many guys do this? How many guys go into scenes and actually location scout? I really need you here just so I need you to help me. I don't know what's going on in the chat. Can you help me out with that? Okay. So what I like to do is kind of like looking at a scene like this is noting where the primary light direction is going, right? So our primary light direction, those hard shadows or the hard light is coming in through these archways. And then what we end up getting in a scene like this is we have a, basically like this would be equivalent to like a silver reflector right here. So these little pieces of highlight against the wall, these are bits and pieces of light that are basically going to be reflecting up. And so if you use these correctly, you can use these as almost a main light. And you'll see on the next image when we go back. This is basically a giant fill over here. So you have this giant fill coming in here and you have light filling actually up too. So all this stuff hitting the ground is actually filling into the ceiling up here. So you can see like the ceiling is actually pretty well lit. So scenes like this, if you just kind of first start by working with the existing light, you can get really great shots and it'll look like you basically have off-camera lighting without actually setting anything up. And so I'm going to go back to just this grid view, just so you can see in a focused image what that looks like. So you can see how right on this wall right here, oops, let me get my brush. You can see how right here, basically, you have that really bright area of wall on each of these where we can place a couple there, or we can put a couple basically anywhere and have really nice light. So when we go and look at these images, I'm going to leave those on there just so my post producers are like, what is going on with these images? All right, so let's take a look at like one of these. So this is a shot straight out of camera at 1/400 of a second at f2.8 ISO 100, and it was taken on a 90mm tilt shift. And there's a couple reasons that I really like this lens for scenes like this. A longer lens in hallways has a really great kind of compression effect over that background. So basically when it comes to shrink down this brush. When it comes to kind of pulling in the columns, that 90mm is going to kind of pull everything in as opposed to something that's like a 50, which is going to make the columns look more spaced in the image. So we go to like a 90mm. I love the tilt shift effect and kind of the way that it blurs. And so hallways like this are perfect places to utilize that. And so that is the raw file here. And so you'll see that everything is actually zeroed out and we can choose to go anywhere we want with this image. And one of the key parts to basically choosing to go anywhere we want with an image is the histogram, making sure that you have as much shadow and highlight detail preserved as possible. And if we press J on this image, notice that with J pressed, I can only see one little space back here. So there's one little spot right here that's actually blown out. Nothing else in this entire image is blown or clipped. And so when it comes down to this type of an exposure, we can choose to do anything we want with it. This is, by the way, a little bit on the warm side. I always shoot a little bit on the warm side in camera because it looks really nice and it's just very presentable to show the clients. But if we wanted to go with like a standard color look, we can. We can go with a signature color and just kind of bring up the exposure a little bit. And what I usually like to do is drop a radial filter with a burn on it. So I'll just put a radial filter with a burn and draw that attention right into them for that. But we can also choose to go which direction we'd like. We can go with black and whiting. We can go with a filmic look. We can even go HDR and this type of stuff. This is a filmic look, actually, the Fuji 400H from the preset. So you can go with a filmic look for a scene like this. As long as that exposure is set up well, you can take it any direction you want in post. And so that's why, you know, it's in terms of lighting, scouting, and all these things, it really plays into that bigger picture of arriving to a final look, making sure that you're scouting it right, lighting it with the intended look that you have in mind, and then going through finally in post-production, kind of carrying that through. Okay. By the way, I'm going to be demonstrating some of because this isn't really a post-production tutorial, I will be showing a little bit of just kind of looks, you know, showing you kind of what the image could possibly look like by clicking some of the presets in the preset system. It's just because we're not actually developing these images. If we had all the time in the world, I would show you guys just on the right side how to develop them. but this is really more so about lighting. All right. I'm going to hop back to the webinar thing and let's turn off the screen share for 1 second. Are there any questions so far?
Not really.
Not really. Just bokeh. Okay, cool. Someone said the resolution is blurry. Make sure no one else is streaming on your internet. Yeah, our resolution or our internet is like a T3 line. So nothing that goes happening is going on our side with the internet connection. Internet connection is pretty blazingly fast. But let me know if it persists. Okay, so let's go back to our lighting slides over here. I'm going to go ahead and just press Shift F5. All right. By the way, Chris, can you see this clearly? Does it show pretty clear on your side?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So when it comes to lighting, it's really funny right now because I'm looking at my like regular camera where it is, and I need to look at this camera. When it comes to lighting and common lighting patterns, I like to teach this anytime we do a lighting course, simply because whether you're working with natural light or whether you are working with artificial light or anything, the lighting patterns and the looks that those patterns carry are going to have a huge impact on your image and the kind of images you guys are trying to create. So over here on the left side.
Hold on.
Mhm.
Let's make sure you're screen sharing.
Oh, shoot. I turned it off for a second and then there we go.
Oh, there's like a 2-minute delay on my end. So.
Share. Perfect. Okay. Let me get back to this slide. So this is a slide from actually Lighting 101 and 201, where we talk about the different purposes of these different lighting patterns. And so even if you're shooting natural light, positioning your subjects so that you have the right kind of light is just as important as if you are adding light. It doesn't matter either way. And these are the different effects that we kind of have placed over these common lighting patterns. So over here on the left side, we have flat lighting. Flat lighting is essentially where the light is coming from the angle of the lens, going straight into the person's face. So this could be, in the archway, if we actually had them standing in the archway but facing towards the light, this would be that look where the light is going directly into somebody's face. Now, over here, you'll see the examples down here are non-diffused examples. So these are just regular examples of what that's going to look like over the face. We actually use an LED panel, a small LED panel, so it looks like a small flash, so that it has a hard edge as well. So you can see exactly how it works over the face. But you'll see here that, oops, I clicked one on this slide. There we go. You'll see on the left side that the characteristics of flat lighting is that there aren't really any shadows, that the shadows are slightly present underneath the chin. There's a little bit underneath like the nose and stuff like that, but really in general, there's very minimal shadows. And the look that has, or kind of the effect that has, is almost something that looks extremely flattering in terms of skin. The reason is the light's going directly in the skin, and instead of like kind of bouncing off these little bumps and creating direction and kind of creating like those little edges that you might see, it's filling into all the gaps and cracks and imperfections that we have in our skin. So you end up with a very flattering type of light. So this light is often used, of course, it's usually a little bit more diffused when it's used this way, but it's used as a beauty light. And so for beauty and fashion and things like that, where they really want to have a soft and flattering look, flat light is great. Flat light is fantastic for couples portraiture too, because it makes people look really, really good. Next, as we go to progress to butterfly, we're going top down now with the light. So now instead of the light coming from the angle of the lens, it's coming top down, and you see basically the shadows that are being cast underneath the chin, underneath the nose, hence the butterfly naming, because it kind of creates a butterfly shadow shape with that light. So the light's coming from directly in front of the face, but above and down towards the face. And this creates, again, a very still beautiful kind of a look to the face. There's a little bit more dimension and direction. You can see that we have more kind of shadows and dimension on the cheekbones, but it still looks really flattering. And if you look, though, you can actually start to see with each of these effects, the blemishes start getting more and more presentable. So over here on the left, this little dot on her face right there, that little imperfection, is actually quite visible now with this lighting pattern. We next go to loop. Loop comes 25 to 50 degrees angled from the subject, and you'll notice that it's loop because you have a shadow coming kind of slightly directional off the face. And the only difference between loop and Rembrandt is that the shadow actually connects. So Rembrandt is just a little bit more angled, where you only get a highlight on the opposite eye. So you get the highlight on the opposite kind of cheek side and just a little bit in the eye with Rembrandt versus Loop, which actually that shadow does not connect. So you get a little bit less drama. But what you're seeing is that as you go from left to right, you're getting more and more drama. And as we add drama, we also kind of reveal more of the imperfection of the skin, all the way to the point where we get to split lighting, which is where the light is directly to the left or right of the person's face. So you're lighting one side of the face, and you'll notice that any now imperfection in the forehead, in the cheek, in anywhere is going to be very pronounced. So obviously it depends on what you're shooting to find the right light. And there's no such thing as the right light in every situation. There's just a right light for the kind of look that you're going for. So usually when we're shooting like engagement and wedding and general portraiture, we're looking for something kind of in this range between these three. We'll go over to Loop, we'll do butterfly, we'll do flat, but we generally try not to do anything Rembrandt or split unless it's on the guy. So when we're talking about the girl, we try and keep it very, very flattering, very kind of soft. With the guy, if we need to position him in a way that it looks dramatic, it actually looks kind of cool when we're working with guys. So that is our 5 common lighting patterns. All right, let's go. Is there any questions in chat right now?
There is one. I'm just jumping in, by the way. This is Chris. Just about permitting in general with he has some specific locations mentioned around our area, but maybe you can talk about just overall permitting advice.
Sure. We permit everywhere. We don't actually do shoots without permitting, mainly because we live in Los Angeles. And so Los Angeles is very strict. I mean, this is the hub of kind of film and television. So it's expected that you have permits. Usually they're pretty inexpensive. Sometimes they can get quite expensive depending on where you're going. Yeah, hopefully that helps. We generally don't shoot without permit just because it's always a really bad kind of impression for the client when you're on a shoot and something gets cut off. Oh, this crashed. Bummer. Let me reopen that real quick. But I'm going to go back to this. Hey, there's Chris.
Hey, everybody. We're having some technical difficulties, so I just jumped in here with Pi. But also with permitting, keep in mind that a lot of your parks, your regional parks, will have annual passes. So I think our Orange County one is only like $250 a year, and it gives you like access to like 10 different parks. So those are usually the way to go. Most beaches don't require permits. Most public piers don't as well. So,
yeah, usually with permitting, there's a difference between film permits and like portrait permits. So if you ever call and are asking for permits, ask for, hey, I just do like kind of basic portraiture and that kind of stuff. Because a film permit, it's going to go from, a typical portrait permit is going to be between $50 to $150, maybe $200. A film permit is going to be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. So just a heads up. Okay. We're going to screen share again and jump back into our presentation. So I wanted to talk a little bit about primary subject positions. We're going to skip.
No screen share.
No screen share?
Yeah.
Oh, weird. Let's go back. It says it's working on my side. Let's try it again.
I'm sorry. It was. I'm sorry. Go back.
Okay, go back. We're getting the hang of this eventually. All right. So, and by the way, obviously we can't go through everything that we talk about in these full courses, but we're going to try and cover a good basis just so that you guys can walk away from this, being able to get something out of it. So we talk about the different patterns, the lighting patterns that are presented on the face. There's another big thing that I wanted to mention, which is we change the lighting patterns on a face just by moving the subject in general. Once I have the lights, and this is the same case when I'm working in the studio, when we're on set, whenever we're doing anything fitness related, anything portraiture related, it doesn't matter. Once the lights are once they are set up once the lights are set up generally in the area that you want them, from there we adjust the lighting pattern just by moving the subject a little bit, kind of moving them side to side. And there's 3 primary positions of the subject's face in relation to that key light, okay? So the main thing to kind of remember here is that with direct or flat lighting, there's kind of a different camera effect from each of these, okay? So direct and flat light, you're presenting symmetry to the camera. So if you look at this image down below, and let me click to remove that Windows thing and then click back. There we go. So if you look at this first image, whenever you're presenting flat light, you're presenting symmetry to the audience because the person is generally looking straight at you and straight at that light. And so that's your strongest kind of asset. Now, if the person's face is not symmetrical, if you're working with a subject that does not have, and we all lack symmetry to an extent. I don't know if you guys have seen those examples of what half your face split and attached together looks like when you put the left and the right together. You can see how we all look quite strange because our faces lack symmetry. But some of us lack more symmetry than others, and some of us have more symmetrical faces than others. Either way, though, if a subject does not have a symmetrical face, then this wouldn't be a good lighting position to use because that's what you're basically presenting forward to the camera. If they do, then fantastic. Flat lighting is absolutely perfect in that kind of situation because it really emphasizes and it shows off that symmetry. The next is short lighting. And we basically say that short lighting has a slimming effect. And the way that you know that you're short lit is that the short side of the face is what's basically closest to the light. It's the brightest part of the image, okay? The brightest part of the face. So the short side of the face is towards the light. What this does is it casts a shadow over the long side of the face. When you do that, it has a slimming effect because we're essentially letting the shadow wrap to the other side of the face. And because the shadows are darker than the highlights, we get this look of slimming. If your subject's face is already extremely slim to begin with, then this might not be the right lighting pattern to use. You might want to turn them a little bit so it's more of a broad lighting setup. But in general, I would say 90% of the time, this is going to be the more flattering position. Angling their chin just a little bit, angling the nose and chin a little bit towards the highlight side. The exact opposite of that, angling the face away from the light gives you broad lighting. So the broad side of the face, this side of the face where it has the most area is facing towards your light. This means that the short side of the face is in shadow, and the effect that this has is a gaining effect. So we're actually making the face look larger than it actually is, okay? Or whatever you want to say. But it kind of has that gaining look. Now, if someone has a very slim face, like we said, then you might want to actually use broad lighting to kind of give them a little more presence in the frame so you're not making their face look too slim. But those are those relations. So as we go back and we look at one of these images, so let's say we go back and we look at some of these images here, you can actually start to identify where the light is falling onto your subject's faces. And in this shot, it's almost as if we have this nice strong highlight. You can see that highlight coming straight from the backside. So we have this highlight right here coming in straight from that back wall. So it creates that really bright outline on her dress. It's really nice. It's very directional. But we also have a lot of fill light coming straight towards the subjects. So it's basically going right into the face. And so we get a very soft and kind of flattering look overall with this scene. But let's look at a different scene that might be a little bit more difficult to kind of gauge, or might be a little bit easier actually to gauge. Let's see. Actually, we'll look at, oh yeah, this is a perfect one. So the example of flat lighting. Let's take a look at this one. This is a cute little shot. So this is straight up flat light where that light is going directly into the face. Now, again, it doesn't matter whether we're doing this with a flash. By the way, I'm pulling this up because this was my engagement shoot yesterday, which I went for a nice little swim to. That's a story for another time. Okay, let's take a look at these ones. So this, it's kind of like we're looking at the light coming from this side. It's almost basically broad lighting on the face, basically. But the reason why it is not terrible here is because we're working with such a soft and diffused light. So as this light is more soft and diffused, it wraps. And when it wraps and when we have a lot of fill, you end up with something that's very usable regardless of the position that their faces are in. Okay. See, this is going to be more flat. So again, we have this. I do a lot of shots, by the way, that feature my guys.
This is a good time to jump in and ask one of these questions. Susan asked, how do you get lighting to lay over someone like a blanket? Perfect lighting. So I think that has to do with your flat lighting, right, Pi?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. I'm going to actually show another slide too in just a second. One thing I wanted to mention over in this scene is that you'll notice like in a walking scene. So when we talk about our angles, let's look at, one of these walking. Let's look at this one. Okay. So this is that same hallway. It's just we went around the other side of the hallway where the light's actually now behind us. So what we have is this light coming in from the arches. So let me just go to the develop side so I can kind of use my brush and draw this in. So this light, let's go down to my red pen. Okay. So that main light that's coming in from our sky basically is coming through the archway. And we positioned her on this side so that way the light goes into her face. So you'll notice that the light is actually going into her face, and her subject, her position, the face position based on where the light is going in is actually flat lighting. Like based on where the camera is, the light is off to the side, right? But based on her face position, it's flat. So the light is going directly into the way that her face is going. For him, it's the exact opposite. And this is where we talked about for guys, it's always going to look better having the guy kind of with the drama than having the girl in the shadow. So we have the guy in the shadow because it's okay to have his face in the shadow. It kind of makes a guy look rugged and manly and so forth, but it's not very flattering the other way. So with that light direction going this way, we put him on this side. We have a fill still coming in from this side off this right wall. If we didn't have a wall here, if we didn't have something there, this is where we would add a flash with maybe an umbrella just to fill some light into his face. It doesn't need to be as bright as this side. It just needs to fill a little bit of light so that it doesn't drop into a really deep shadow. Okay. But that's kind of positioning the subject to kind of work with that existing light in a scene. So let's go back to the presentation. I want to answer that question. How do you get light to wrap? This comes to light qualities. Okay. So these kind of concepts always get mixed up with each other. Soft and hard versus diffused and specular. A soft versus a hard light, this simply deals with the size of the light. Okay, so for example, actually, I'll have something in my hand that I can demonstrate. Okay, let's turn this back to Hangout. Okay, so right here, guys, we have our flash, right? So this is just our bare bulb flash. This is, let's say, the flash with, this is the Magmod scoop. I call it the lacrosse cup, because it looks like a lacrosse stick when you have it on your flash and you put it onto a light stand. So just a flash head like this is going to be relatively small. Okay, so our light source is very, very small. Adding this makes it roughly 3 times maybe larger. The larger the light source gets, the softer the light gets. So when you put this on, you will get a little bit more of a soft light, but is it going to necessarily wrap? If this was placed right next to my face like this, then yes, you'd actually get a lot of light wrap, because in relation to my face, this is a very, very large light source when I'm holding it this. I love how my exposure is like changing as I bring this closer and stuff. So in relation to my face, this is a very large light source right now. So what's going to happen is the shadows will wrap softly around my face. But as soon as this goes back about 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, then it becomes a very small light source in relation to my face. And in fact, whether I have this diffuser, whether I have the Magmod on it or not, whether it's bare bulb, it's not that big of a difference at that point. So if you want light to wrap, you need to have a large light source in relation to your subjects. Generally, if the light source is going to be 4, 5, 6, 7 feet away, you're talking about a softbox or a window or something natural, that like an archway that creates a large amount of soft kind of diffused light coming in. That's what's going to create that. A flash like this, you need to get a pretty massive diffuser on it to be able to basically make it wrap if it's going to be 10, 15 feet away. Now, the other side of this, so let me flip back to my PowerPoint real quick. Okay. So the other side of this light quality debate is the diffused versus specular. Now, so here on the left side, you can see that this is actually a softbox that's held over her head with the light coming down. You can see how the soft graduation of the shadows is present there. This is direct flash. You can see that the transition between shadow and highlight edge is pinpoint-like. It's just like a straight line, basically. There is no transition. So diffusion, or I'm sorry, so soft creates a or a larger light creates a softer light, which graduates. A smaller light creates a harder light, which does not graduate. But you can have a soft specular light, if that makes sense. While we're actually talking about this, I'm going to pull something up just so I can have it ready to show you guys in my catalog. Let me pull up. Actually, I think I have it in a different presentation. I'll just show it there. So,
quick question. Well, just an interruption. Mike's asking, do you bring light stands and how do you position your lights so they are easily edited out in post?
I'll show you guys an example of that. We'll finish this and then we'll go to that right afterwards. So diffuse specular. So diffused is simply having a matte type quality to the light modifier. Okay, so what that means is like, for example, a silver reflector, that is specular. It's silver. So the light that it throws back is a very reflective and hard light. It's basically catching direct light and throwing it back. And what that means is you get reflections off of skin and you get strong highlights over areas of highlight and specular areas, like where you have maybe a little bit of water, a little bit of oil, that kind of stuff in a scene. A matte quality, so the inside of a reflector is the scrim. That's what's going to give you a very diffused light where the highlights are very soft. You're not throwing a lot of light back. So basically the light's not bouncing off of her skin and coming back into the camera. That's what creates those strong highlights that you see on the right side. So here we have the exact same person. It's actually only like about 30 minutes apart. Here we dressed her in this like kind of soft look. It's like a very flattering portrait bohemian look. So we shot it with a diffused light source. Here, we're going for that kind of harder edge bikini fashion kind of vibe. So we're using a silver, a specular light source for this image. And you can see how dramatic of a difference those two things make. But they are independent of being soft versus hard. So what I'm saying is you can have a soft and diffused light, which would be a large light source with a matte diffusion, or you can have a soft specular light, which is a large light source with silver, basically with a silver softbox that would shine silver hard light directly at your subject. Silver specular light, I mean. Likewise, this is going to be basically a more specular direct light versus when we put something like this is the, we call it the mag boob. The mag sphere. You'll know what I mean when you get it, okay? Anyway, this diffuses the light a little bit more than just this. So this is gonna be a little more specular. This is gonna be a little bit more diffused, all right? Because it gives it a matte quality finish. Okay, so let's go over some examples of off-camera lighting and how we do things. I'm gonna go back to our catalog right here. From the shoot yesterday, I'm gonna pull up, let's see. This was actually at the mission. Oh, there was another scene that I wanted to analyze for you guys too, but we'll do that in a second. All right, let's take this one for example. Now this is going to be basically a composite shot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you like a very simple composite effect. Okay, we're going to do this in full detail in the Creative Live class, but let's just do a quick demo right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply a basic preset to this. Usually for something like this, I'd probably use like a natural HDR color type thing. And then I'm just going to tweak a little bit of the temperature. Keep it really simple. I'm going to add in not a red pen. Let's switch this to just the exposure. Just to pull that attention right into them. And you'll see that I have my lighting assistant right here. And by the way, I also have a bunch of dust up here. Let me show you guys something. In the tools in the preset system, we have this dust correction curve. Click this. It'll automatically start to reveal any pieces of dust that are difficult to see. And it's very easy to remove those pieces. So what I usually do is I'll remove it. I'll remove this dust, especially because this is a tripod shot. I'll remove it without turning this on, and then I'll turn it on and catch all the other little bits and pieces that I couldn't see. So once you're done, you can just click remove. And all of our dust is now gone. Okay, so perfect. Sometimes you have dust and you don't actually see it until you blow it up. That curve will reveal dust even when it's very, very light on the sensor. So it's really, really nice. Okay, so you can still see my person here with the light stand. So I actually have for this image, that's my lighting assistant. Jerusha. She has 3 flashes up there. I've got my mag mod on there. I didn't put the grids on because I knew this was going to be a composite, so light spill wasn't too big of a deal. They're about 6 feet away, 3 flashes firing at full power onto our subjects that are sitting right there. Again, some people always ask why we shoot these kind of wide shots. It's because they make fantastic 40 by 60 images. Like they're images that they would put up in their home because they're kind of like artistic images. What we're going to do is I'm going to select this image. This image is our plate shot. So this is where everything is removed from the frame. We're going to select that one. I'm going to press 6 to mark it as red. And then I do this lovely little spray trick, which if you've been to one of our workshops or if you are going to be present on the Creative Live Day, we're going to show you exactly how to do this. We're basically spraying the lens with water, and I do it a couple different times, and I'll pop the flash right into the lens to get this look. So I'm going to select these 3 images. Those are going to be my composite images. Okay, I'm going to turn on my red filter so I can see those 3. I'm just going to synchronize the develop setting across all of them. I'm going to click check all and hit synchronize. So that way all 3 images are identical. And then all we do now is we're going to go edit in, open as layers inside of Photoshop. Okay, now for these kind of shots, you generally don't have to remove your flashes unless you're shooting super wide and you're catching your flashes in the shot, in which case just put it onto a tripod so that you can do this. The importance of having it on a tripod is, well, you're going to see it right here. Okay, we need to have it on that tripod because if we don't, I'm going to show you what's going to happen. Okay, I'm going to hide this little guy right there. All right, we have it loaded up. What we're going to do is go File, and actually we can go down to our let's see, I think it's under edit. Yep. Auto align layers. And we're just going to go auto, click OK. It's going to automatically align. Now, if you're not on a tripod, this is an issue. Okay. So you want to be on a tripod. You can possibly hand hold this sometimes if I'm super lazy or if I just don't have the gear that I need, I will. But tripoding it makes this a 5-minute process versus a 20-minute process. So watch. Here we have Jerusha right there. I'm going to go ahead and add a mask. Use a black brush, and where's my Wacom tablet? There it is. Okay, so I'm just going to use a black brush, and you can look at my brush settings. I'm going to use a fairly large brush, 0 hardness. I usually like to paint with a fairly low flow, like 25% for stuff like this, and we're just going to paint black over this area where Jerusha is standing. And boom, she's removed from the image. Now, the reason why I don't mind the spill in this kind of a scene is because if I like, I can just remove some more of that flash and it just reveals the underlying layer. So basically, I don't need to grid it when I'm working with this type of a scene. I just shoot it, and then, in the composite, I'll kind of tweak it a little bit. All right, so now that's gone. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go up to that bottom layer and drag it up to the top. This is that sparkle layer. And what I would probably do with this layer actually is I'm going to do this. I didn't actually look at it before I brought it in. It's a little bit too blue for my taste. So I'm going to go back to Lightroom, and I'm just going to take this and warm it up a little bit. And I don't know if we need the dust correction stuff on there. So let's just reset this and let's see where the dust is at. Yeah, it looks like the dust correction didn't quite work correctly when it was copied over. So I'm just going to apply it again right there. That looks good enough. Okay, and then we're going to warm this up a bit. So I'm going to go maybe do about right there. I'm going to click Edit, Control E, and E if you're on a Mac, just to bring it into Photoshop. I'm just going to copy this by pressing Control A, Command A, Control C, and then Control or Command C to drop it in. Now we can align this once again if I want to. I can just click both these layers by holding down Control or Command. Oops. Okay, Control, there we go. And then we can align it again. Or you can just manually align it. Either way, it's not a big deal. And what we're going to do is just hold down Alt or Option and click the mask so that it makes it disappear. And then all we do is we just reveal this like at a very low flow by painting white. Or drop in this nice little bokeh effect. And yes, you can do texture packs and stuff online that give you bokeh effects. It is doable. And it looks like this didn't quite align correctly, so we're just going to align it. And oh, what's happening is that there's a little bit of movement in the trees, which can happen. So what we'll do is we'll just paint this off. So we'll just make it an effect that kind of reaches into the corner and comes down a little bit, but we won't go over like the leaves of the trees. So the reason why I don't like kind of bokeh packs and stuff like that is because I feel like they're they don't really have a realistic look to how it would look. What we're trying to simulate is kind of like dust on a sensor. If the light came in and kind of hit those dust particles, create a little bit of that sparkle look. That's it. We're going to go back to Lightroom, and then once you're back in, you should have that finished file. Let's see, there it is. Okay. And you can continue to do whatever you want at this point, but that's as simple as it is to remove something. I just constrained the crop, by the way, so we get rid of the white on the edges. Oops, I turned on Chinese on my computer. All right. That makes sense on how we remove flashes. This was kind of a fun shot that we did yesterday too. This is a new technique that I was doing, which is basically doing a panoramic stitch shot with a tilt shift lens. I'm trying to load this full screen so you guys can see it. There we go. This is a tilt shift lens. So we're using the 90mm tilt shift. I have an ND filter that's being held over the lens so that we can basically shoot it like f4. So the plane is tilted. We have a flash that's placed right here, the same effect that we kind of did just a second ago. And then we stitch this all together and then remove the flash from the frame. So this is what you get, this very dramatic kind of underexposed look with a tilt shift over a wide angle image, which I thought looked kind of cool. And then I kind of realized this might be easier to do in post actually than it was in camera. You wouldn't get the same like quality of tilt shift effect, but it's pretty similar. All right.
Can I jump in with some questions since we're talking about ND filters and stuff like that?
Totally.
A couple of questions around the same thing, so I'll just kind of clump them up. Some people are asking about HSS versus ND filters. Others are talking about how to shoot at low apertures, shallow depths of field with flash during the day. So I think they're all kind of related. So if you can just talk about your workflow there.
So HSS versus using NDs?
Yep. And also just in general, shooting at shallow depths of field with flash during the day.
Cool. Do you mind grabbing my ND filter pouch over there? And I'll show them. So we use the Photix. I know someone mentioned this is a Lightroom class. It's lighting in Lightroom. Come on, guys. It all plays into the big picture. I don't know what to call this course. Call it whatever you like. So this is the Photix Odin, and we use I love the Photix Metros Plus systems. Justin and Chris use the Canon 600EXs, the 600EX RTs. I think Chris, you used to use the Photixes, right?
I still do.
Oh, Chris still has them. He said he wants to switch back to Canon though. I don't mind personally the Photix system. I think both the Canon 600EX RT and the Photixes are a little bit cumbersome when it comes to kind of the controlling of all the different features. You have to kind of learn both systems anyway. But what this allows you to do is allows you to control your off-camera flashes directly from the remote, okay? You can control it, and you can control power settings, you can control zoom settings, you can control HSS versus, well, just shooting regular. HSS is high-speed sync. You can do it all from this little remote. Here's the thing. Anytime you go above the camera's sync speed, so we know that the camera's sync speed is around 1/200th of a second. It generally varies. Sometimes they claim 1/250th of a second. We found that that's usually very off. Usually it's more like 1/160th of a second to get a flawless kind of sync on all cameras. The Photix works really well at 1/200th. Some of them, just learn your system, but you'll know when there's something wrong with the sync when you get the black bar. You guys know the black bar where you see the flash goes off in the part of the frame, and then there's a black bar underneath where everything's darker. If you see that, your radio is not synchronizing with the flash head during the shutter, okay? So what happens when you go to high-speed sync is, well, under 1/200th of a second, the radio can tell your off-camera flash quick enough to fire. And that's why it works. That's why that's the regular sync speed. Above 1/200th of a second, you go into high-speed sync, okay? Sometimes they call it something different, but high-speed sync is basically what it is. Now, with high-speed sync, the issue, though, is that your flash is no longer actually able to fire. I mean, nothing changed physically. The flash still cannot fire its shot in between the window of the shutter opening and closing. Like, let's say you're at 1/1000th of a second. Well, the flash still can't fire in that 1/1000 second. So what it does instead is it actually pulses. I don't know if you guys have seen a flash pulsing, but basically it's going to pulse, and I can kind of simulate it. Well, you wouldn't be able to see it on the video anyway. So the flash is firing within that 1/1000 of a second. It's going to fire, say, 50 times just to make sure a flash lands on your subjects. So the downside is if the flash is firing 50 times within that 1/1000 of a second, then you're losing power, and you're losing a dramatic amount of power. And the power that you're losing is going to basically be in correlation to how fast your sync speed is. So you raise your shutter speed from 1/1000 to 1/2000, you're losing more power. From 1/2000 to 1/4000, and then 8000, you're losing even more power. To give you an idea, a ProPhoto B2 or ProPhoto B1, these are the kind of creme de la creme in terms of like our favorite off-camera lighting solutions for high power strobes on the go. These guys will lose 7 stops of power between the regular sync speed of 1/200th and 1/8000th of a second. I mean, at one, it's not even, okay, if you lose 7 stops, that's more than 700%. It's 7 stops. So you're having and having and having and having and having and having. You have like 2 to 3% of the amount of light that flash could actually put out. So what's the benefit of using an ND filter? I'm going to give you a demonstration. This is a Tiffin Square ND. This is the Water White 1.2. The ND filter is going to simply cut down. Yeah, someone said use 6 ProPhoto B1s. Awesome. That'd be great if you can afford $20,000. Okay, so this guy, an ND filter simply cuts down the amount of light. So you place it over the lens, and I'm super lazy when I'm shooting. A lot of times you can get these. So we get tons of filters because we try these things out, but these are screw-on filters, which will screw onto your lens thread. This is a 10 stop. So this is the Tiffin XLE Apex. This is a 10 stop neutral density filter. So it cuts down light by 10 stops. You can screw this onto the filter ring if you have an 82 millimeter lens size. And you can buy these, of course, in different lens sizes. But this goes back to me being kind of practical and somewhat lazy at times. If I'm doing a portrait session, I'll just grab this and hold it over my lens. So I literally will hold it with my hand just right over the lens like this. And just don't, yeah. If you're doing a tripoded shot, if I'm doing a tripoded shot with a slow shutter, I wouldn't do this because you're going to cause motion in your image. But if you're not, then you can just hold this over the lens if you're just taking a portrait. And that way you can switch to a different lens. You can do whatever you want and not have to constantly be screwing these things on and off. So what that does now is it brings our camera's light. So it brings the light entering the camera down. If we are at 1/4000th shooting at f1.4 in midday, we can place this over the camera. 4 stops means I go from 1/4000th. Well, I think 2000. Let's say 2000. So I go from 1/2000th to 1/1000. That's 1 stop. 1/1000th to 1/500. That's 2 stops. 1/500 to 1/250th. That's 3 stops. 1/250th to 1/125th. That's 4 stops. So yeah, even if you're at 1/4000th, you can get down to around your 1/200th of a second sync speed while shooting wide open in midday light. Okay, 4 to 5 stops is typically what you need for shooting wide open in midday sun. The benefit of this over HSS is you take advantage of the full power of your flash. Okay. So we can still utilize the full power of the flash, whereas at 1/4000th of a second sync speed, we would see a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of power coming out of this. Now, the question is, does this affect your flash power too? Yes. The ND filter will cut down your flash power by 4 stops as well. The important thing to know is that when you're at 1/4000th or 1/8000th of a second, your flash is cut down by around 7 to 8 stops. So you're able to get 3 to 4 stops of extra flash power out of your camera by using an ND filter versus trying to use the high-speed sync in this guy. That all makes sense? Yeah, Sean also mentioned it saves the battery. He's absolutely right, because using high-speed sync is firing your flash at full power and just trying to use every bit of juice it can for every one of those pops. It'll save power. It'll save recycle time too. Okay. So you can do it on a tripod with none moving subjects on a wide angle lens. I didn't quite get that.
Hi, let's jump into some of your nighttime tips. I think a lot of people had questions on that and some of the good stuff.
Terry, why? This is off-camera flash basics. Doesn't get any more basic than sync speeds. What was that?
Get to some night stuff. I think that we got a lot of questions on that and some of the goodies. If you have anything in your catalog for that.
Let's go to this guy. Actually, I think I might have one prepped over here. Yeah, let's do this guy. Okay. So.
Are you sharing?
Huh?
Your screen sharing?
Yeah, I'm going to screen share in just a second. Okay, so let's talk about another case study right now. Oh, Josh asked variable ND filters. No. Variable ND filters are going to reduce your light, reduce your lens quality even more, because variables use 2 layers of glass as opposed to 1. So it's the image quality is going to drop quite a bit. Okay. So I want to do a little case study right now. This is actually from Lighting 101, but this would work with off-camera flash just as it would with on-camera flash. Now, in this case study, in Lighting 101, if you guys have seen that course, we demonstrate how to create off-camera lighting effects with just your on-camera flash. And so what we're actually doing is taking the flash and just bouncing it off a reflector. We're using a grid to control the light spill. But it'd actually be easier to shoot this just using off-camera flash if you have a radio that can get it off. So let's say we have our photics, we have our flash. This shot is created by basically just taking a single flash off camera. What we're doing is we're using in this shot like a 40-inch 5-in-1 to bounce. If you have an umbrella, umbrellas are one of our favorite tools. Just grab a Westcott shoot-through umbrella. It's like 20 bucks. They are such a fantastic lighting tool, and they'll fit in any lighting case. And all you do is you just place that right in front of the flash, fire through the umbrella, which is going to diffuse it, and then just get your camera settings set right. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this in one more second too, but basically all we've done here, and this is why we talk about, scouting a scene and understanding the light in that scene is so critical, because this shot, to get it to look like this, is all about understanding where the light is originally in the scene. So where he's placed, you'll actually notice over here on the left side that he has an edge or a rim light already on him. There's actually, we're shooting under a bridge in this scene. And so what you're seeing here is the lighting of this bridge behind us. This is where cars are traveling through the bridge. We're on the sidewalk. There's an open concrete window off to the left side, and there's just a little bit of light coming in there. So I placed him there so we had a little bit of an edge light right there. And we set our exposure first. So we always start by setting the ambient light exposure. What kind of a look do we want? Do we want dramatic? We got to pull the ambient light down. Do we want natural? We got to raise the ambient light up. Here we want dramatic. We're trying to create a sinister look, which means we want shadows. And the whole story behind this is that this subject of mine was an actor for Lion King. He actually played Scar. So he goes, I want a headshot that will fit that persona of Scar. So we go, okay, well, we place him here. So we go dark on the exposure. So now we can see kind of the background lighting. We can see this gray effect. It kind of looks cool. And we still see a little bit of the rim light over this left side coming in, from that left angle. We add in the flash. All it is about 1/8 power flash, where our camera settings are set to 1/50th of a second, f1.6, and ISO 200. The flash is held really close to him, and you can use that reflector or the umbrella. Or if you want, you can bounce off the reflector. I can show you how the grid is set up and how that bounce works in a second. But that flash fires through your diffusion, and it gets this. And then all we do is, I like that look, this split lit look. So this is that split lighting pattern. You can see how much drama it has on the face, which it looked fantastic. I actually delivered this image too. And then all I did was turn his chin to the right side to get that Rembrandt light. And then we get this shot with the highlight hitting that side of the face and catching his cheek underneath. And we get this beautiful kind of just dramatic, dark look to this headshot. And this was actually all done with just an on-camera flash. So very simple, very easy to do, but off camera, the benefit of working off camera versus trying to bounce we teach Lighting 101 so that you can practice the fundamentals without having to go buy anything else in your toolkit. But when you get into lighting 201 and off-camera flash, the benefit is that having a flash set up, being held or on a stand, either way, allows for much more consistent images because you're not trying to bounce and you're not controlling as many variables at once. So it's very much easier to do if you have that flash set up. All right, let's jump out of this guy. And I want to show you guys, one little tip here. Actually, there's another OCF shot. We're going to go a little bit over, guys, because we started a tiny bit late and because I want to. So there. All right. I want to show one thing, which is, let's bring up lighting 201. So this is off-camera flash. And do we have any questions right now? There's a slide in here that I want to show everybody.
Sure. Just keep going for now.
Okay. So I want to show you guys, a lot of people are very shy and timid when it comes to adding light and adding flash to scenes because they don't want to make a scene look unnatural, or they feel like everything, when it's flashed, it looks like it's flashed. And that's really not the case. Things don't look flashed just because you're adding flash. They look flashed because of the balance between ambient to, let's see, it might have been in lighting 101 actually. That's all right, we can pull it up. Yeah, let's do that. Or I can give them a little sneak peek here. This is a sneak peek of the Creative Live thing. I got to go quick so you guys don't see stuff. All right.
Do you want to answer real quick? When do you use TTL versus manual?
TTL versus manual. We always use manual. There's no the thing with TTL is that you're going to use more flash power. So you're going to use actually more of your batteries. It's going to slow down your recycle times. And the main issue with TTL is that you don't know your flash power. So we always shoot manual in camera and shoot manual on flashes. And the whole reason behind that is because we need consistent images start to finish. As we adjust our position, as we adjust everything, we'll adjust the lights as we need to. But we need that light to fire consistently throughout. And being on TTL makes it so that you don't know what the power setting is. So when you want to make an adjustment, you really don't necessarily know where to go from that, or how much power you have remaining in the flash, or, so forth. So we always shoot manual everything. It's going to save battery. It's going to save recycle time. It's going to make your images more consistent, make post-production better. It's just a little bit more time to kind of learn and get used to it, but it's going to be well worth it in the end. So on Monday, we're going to be talking about this in depth. This is flashed ambient balance. This is a simplified version of that lighting 101 slide, basically, where if you want a natural look to an image, all that means is that you have more ambient light and less flash power. If you want a more dramatic image, you cut down the ambient light and you add more flash power. So when people say flash can't look natural, that's not really the case. It's just because you're adding too much flash to the image. And if you want flash to look natural, it's very simple. You just add less, you keep the ambient light, and you put the flash in positions where the ambient light might naturally come from. Meaning, if you don't want an image to look flash, don't place your flash in an area where light wouldn't naturally come from. So if light wouldn't naturally come from directly behind the subjects, then you probably wouldn't put it there. But if it would come from back there, say from the setting sun on the ocean, then that would be a perfect place to place it. All right, so let's go, and I want to show you guys this image. This is a perfect example of, this is from Lighting 201 from Off-Camera Flash, of basically working with the scene and creating, there we go. Working within a scene and using off-camera flash to basically boost existing light. So what we have in this image is our subject is, this is actually my business partner's wife, Yvette, who's beautiful, and she's standing in the middle of a desert in this great dress, and it looks absolutely fantastic. And my natural shot was at, let's see, we shot this at f11, 1/200 of a second, and ISO 50, okay? This gave us a perfect amount of information. We have nothing blown out, nothing clipped. The problem was, at this exposure, she tends to fall into the background quite a bit. So she's kind of blends into the desert. So what I wanted to do was add an off-camera flash that would basically just pump up the existing light without ruining what was already there, because what was already there was fantastic. And I love working with hard light. So what we did is, you can see the sun is actually coming from the top right and it's coming down. We position the face so that we get basically a soft little loop light on the face, and the shadows draw to this side. I actually had the flash placed in the exact same angle coming from the sun. So the flash is placed on the same angle coming from the sun, and it's in this second shot. And we're firing at quite a bit of power. We're using actually the Bolt VB22s are, I think they have Cheetahs and Godox. They're basically the same flash. But we're firing this guy through a softbox, adding like 500 watts of flash power. That's like 6 to 8 pocket strobes to 6 to 8 flashes firing through a softbox. We're adding that to the scene. And notice that what it does is it lifts a little bit of the shadows, and it adds a natural dodging effect to the image. So basically what we've done is essentially dodged and burned with just light that we add onto the scene. And we get this beautiful pop where now she comes off the background. She's now brighter than the background, but the effect is still very subtle. And when we finalize the image, we remove some of the things in the background, and we get this really beautiful and soft image off to the right side. So I know as photographers, we have this tendency to kind of place our subjects backs to the light and to always shoot that way, but it kind of tends to look a little overdone at times. And there's certain scenes that just look amazing with this type of effect. I'm going to show you guys another recent shoot with that exact, actually this shot right here is that exact same technique of, all we did was we matched the direction of where the light was coming from, place the flash on them just to pump them up. But let me show you a kind of more close-up shot from actually one of our recent live workshops. Let's see here. Okay, so check this out. This is the exact same thing right here. Flashes. This is the Profoto B1 placed inside of a softbox, because anytime you want to use softboxes in midday sun, you really need to either be using 3, 4, 5 speed lights, or have a high power unit that can actually put enough power down to be modified. Otherwise, we use direct flash, like direct bare bulb flash during the midday, because the flashes aren't powerful enough to be modified. Okay, so this is just coming from the same direction as that hard sunlight. And we basically get this final image. And all we did was, it's the same compositing trick that we just showed you guys. We removed them from the frame by tripoding and then shooting the image. So we get this really great look where it looks like we shot this with the natural just sunlight in the frame, but for some reason our subjects are pumped up. They're brighter, and they stand out from the scene, as opposed to kind of just blending into everything. So another really fantastic use of off-camera flash. We're getting a little bit towards the end right now, guys. So what I want to do is I want to open up some time just for everybody to ask questions.
I have a question then. Pierre wants to know, do you prefer, when you use an umbrella, do you prefer to use it by the reflection or by diffusion?
Umbrella with reflection or diffusion?
I think he's talking about
okay.
Shoot through or bounce.
Yeah, so the umbrella that I actually have is the Westcott 5-in-1 with the black. So you can actually shoot either way, right? And I really like that one. So I can choose to go shoot through or use the black. I don't have a preference. It's really just based on the scene. So the thing with going with a shoot through, and by the way, I think if you get it with the black sheath, it's like $30 on Amazon. So it's really inexpensive, by the way. It's like $20 versus $30. So just get it with the sheath so that way you can shoot both ways. But do you want to grab one of the umbrellas just so I can hold it while I'm demonstrating? But when you shoot through the umbrella, light is essentially, if you imagine what the light is doing, it's bouncing. You're getting a lot of that light that goes actually through the umbrella. But then you're also getting light that bounces backwards. Okay, so you're getting light that bounces backwards, and essentially what's happening is that your light is going everywhere in the scene. Now, sometimes when you're shooting in really tight, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if light goes everywhere. You just need to place light on something. So here is this is the Westcott with the black sheath on the outside. This is just a standard shoot through umbrella. So if I open this up and you guys take a look at this, if I fire this flash through here, then you can see how a lot of that light is going to go through, but then a lot of it's going to be bounced around too. And so if you're in a scene where you don't necessarily want to light up the entire scene, then you'd be better off using the other umbrella, because the other umbrella will let you place it up somewhere and use the reflection to come back, and it's not going to spill all over the outside of the area. So basically a reflector with a black on it, or with a silver on the other side with a black over it, whatever, the it's going to give you a little bit better light control than just a shoot through reflector, which is going to send a shoot through umbrella is going to send light pretty much everywhere. Okay. But there's not really a preference as to, which I would use. If you want to get more light onto your subject and have more targeted, use the black and reflect it. If you want to just kind of get some amount of light in the scene, you don't really care if it bounces everywhere, then use just a regular umbrella. All right.
Next one is talking about gels. When to use gels, when to not.
Good question. Okay. So gelling is going to be one of those things that let's bring up. I actually prepped a slide for that. So I'm going to show you guys one slide. You can either gel for effect or you can gel to correct. Okay. I feel like everything I say rhymes for some reason, and it's not really intentional. It happens. So in a scene where you want to send the background into a deep blue, what we've done here is this is actually a lighting 101 shot too, where we placed the gel just using the mag mod. We placed a gel right over the mag mod and bounced it off a reflector. So now the gelled light, if you look at this is uncorrected. You'll see that the light on our face is very, very orange. Okay. So what happens is when we send the white balance in camera down, when we correct for the skin tone, so for the super orange skin, it sends the background to a blue. And then with the gel now corrected, we get the correct skin tones over now a blue background. This is basically gelling for effect. So if you want to get this is a very popular look that we shot for Lighting 101 to show you guys you can do with an on-camera flash bouncing off a reflector by gelling it. We did this because it's a super popular look that's used in bikini fashion and sports fashion and stuff like that. And it was made popular actually by Sports Illustrated with gelling for effect. But then the other time to gel is to gel in a scene where you want to actually correct for the light. So let me come back to our little hangout. So if you walk into that gel was a CTO, Susan. It was a color temperature orange. So if you walk into a reception room that is primarily tungsten light or orange light, that's most of the time your reception rooms are going to be that color. If you're working indoors, these lights are generally going to be tungsten lights. They're orange. What happens is when you fire a flash, the flash naturally, this light that is coming off of this flash head is at 5,500 degrees Kelvin. It's at daylight temperature. So it's very blue compared to the orange lights that you'd have indoors. So we'll also gel these indoors so that we can match the two light sources. So that way our backgrounds don't look muddy. They don't look, crazy. So those are basically the two ways that we're using gels. We're using it for effect purposes, and then we're using it for corrective purposes. It's a little bit too in depth right now to jump into how specifically indoors we would do it, other than just to say that if the room is orange, match the color temperature in that room. What's the next one?
Great. Let's go with whether you use a light meter or not.
Whether I use the light meter? No, I actually use just the so I meter for the scene just in camera, and I'll get my ambient exposure for the scene. And I always approach every scene the same way. It doesn't matter if I'm doing a commercial shoot, a wedding shoot, or anything. I get my shot for how I want the ambient light to look, and then I start adding light to it. So I'll start adding the flashes and then and you always start by adding one light, get that light set up in the right position, get it modified, get it correctly working. And then if you need another light, you add another light. But it's very difficult to start in a scene to set up multiple lights at once and trying to get everything right. And I found that metering is a fantastic tool if you are working in the studio a lot and you need to quickly switch the lighting ratio, or you want to get very precise lighting ratios. There's still a great purpose to using meters. It's generally when you want to get, it's really that. It's you're in the studio and you're shooting something for a commercial client, and you need to get a perfect light ratio of 3-to-1, 4-to-1 on, the back of their head versus the front of the face versus the side versus everything, around the scene. That's where a meter comes in really handy, but it tremendously slows down a shoot. And for most of the things that I'm doing, 99% of them, I'd rather be able to work quickly than to have that need. I don't need to get my lighting ratios that flawless 99% of the time. Even for most of our commercial stuff, it's okay to just look on the screen while I'm tethered and to make sure that everything looks good in that situation. So
I like Caleb's question.
what is the most underrated flash accessory? I'm going to show you, Caleb, my favorite. Do you have the mag grid?
I don't know where that is.
Oh, it might be in here. Let's see. Here it is. Okay. I would say my two most used and most underrated flash accessories. I sound like Sean Connery right now. Accessories. Okay. Are the Magmod grid and gel. Now, generally what I do is here's the Magmod grid. And no, this was not sponsored. Don't worry. So grids are probably my favorite lighting modifier because they are what lets me control exactly where the light is falling. So I can turn a flash that would spill all over the place into something that has a pin light on whatever I need. So I can add multiple lights to a scene. I can create really cool dynamic images because I can control exactly where that light is going via the grid. And the gel is the other thing that, we use the gel. And by the way, this is a note to Magmod, the company. I always lose the internal gels inside of this, but I have just like regular CTO gels in my bag. And so all I do is I just sandwich it. Like you just put the gel in here and just sandwich it on there and it works totally fine. I found that easier than trying to constantly keep track of the small gels that you put into it. And it's also quicker than having to put it into it, but that's how I do. So those are probably my two like easiest and I would say most underrated flash accessories.
Cool.
Oh, someone asked a good question. Jason asked, what's the difference between using a grid versus a snoot? I actually happen to have a snoot right here. Who would have thunk it? Okay, so this is the mag snoot. And by the way, we use tools that we love to use and then we promote them because we love to use them. So we'll show you guys what we're using. By no means do people ask us to do this. It's just, well, yeah. Anyway, the Magmod system is just fantastic because they're very easy to use and everything stays together very well. And it's also very quick to kind of just get everything working together. And I think my magnets are reversed. How wonderful. So this is the snoot. Now, what this snoot allows you to do is I can actually control the amount of spill from a snoot the same way that I would with a grid. The only difference is you can see that a snoot's going to control it even more. Okay, so a snoot is going to, like, this is going to put a pattern on a wall, right? This is going to basically draw the light in and put a smaller area so I can get that. This is going to put like a pinpoint on somebody. And I can actually extend that pinpoint. So as I pull it out, I actually extend how much I want it to snoot. Like this is literally like you could drop a little light like right on somebody's cheek with this guy. Whereas this one is really going to light more of, their face and kind of body a little bit without hitting the background type of a guy. So this is just less precise, more precise. Hopefully that works. You also have different variations of grids. So grids come in different patterns. This is either a 1/4 or 1/8. So the smaller the pattern, the more it beams and focuses the light. With any of these types of objects that you use, by the way, guys, you do lose light. You lose light power with these guys. So cool. We are getting towards the end, folks. So how many guys are going to be on Creative Live with me?
There's a little delay, by the way.
I see that. We have any other questions?
I mean, you can go on for questions for a while. There's going to be a few, but.
Oh, Brian asked a really great question with Magmods and SD card corruption. Like magnets and I mean, like the SD cards that we're buying, they're basically, if you look at them on the site when they like SanDisk and Samsung and whoever sells them, they say that they're like X-ray magnet and all that kind of stuff proof. Like we haven't had issues on that kind of side for a long time. So in general, I mean, I don't keep my magnets in the same place as I do my SD cards, but even if you did, that shouldn't really be an issue. So, Steve Irwin, you're such a bro. So if you guys want more of any of these tutorials, we have Photography 101, Lighting 101, Lighting 201, which are available in the store. Because we've this webinar thing has been a learning process for us. And so Chris felt like we need to give you guys just credit and props for helping us out and for getting us to this point. And from here on out, it should be pretty solid. So he's created a webinar fail. We are very self-deprecating here in the studio. Webinar fail is a 25% off code that will give you guys 25% off anything you guys want. And I think we'll carry it out through today, just to say thanks for everybody for sticking around and being patient with us as we figured this all out. So, and then, yeah, Incredible Engagement Photography is going to be on Monday. And by the way, we have a really cool announcement coming on Monday too, which I can't really say right now, but it'll be worth listening to. Josh, Lighting 301, it'll come, buddy. It'll come. I got a bunch of courses I'm trying to get through. I got to get through all the wedding stuff first, and then I'll try and get back to Lighting 301 towards the end of the year if I can. But it'll be coming. All righty, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up.
If you didn't get your question answered, I would recommend jumping into the SLR Lounge Facebook group. I will spend some time.
Did I just totally...
Yeah, you are. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. We'll see you guys next time.
I'm so sorry, guys. I was trying to post a link